In 2108, humanity began colonizing the stars.
There are some games I can't stop playing. Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries released on December 10th, 2019 from Canadian developer Piranha Games. It's most neatly categorized as a mercenary sandbox simulator, like Mountain Blade or Star Sector, where the player navigates an overworld, picks battles, and improves a persistent army. Gameplay is split between management of the company and battlefield missions that can be played as either first-person or third-person shooters. There's a campaign mode with a questline about getting revenge for the death of your father, and a career mode that plays as a more traditional sandbox. Mechwarrior 5 was initially an Epic Games exclusive, but nowadays it's available on the PlayStation, Xbox, GOG, and Steam. It's set in the Battletech universe. If you're not familiar with Battletech, it's fairly akin to the Warhammer setting, a tabletop war game that has gradually expanded its lore and spiraled out into novels, video games, and more. It's a grounded setting compared to Warhammer, no aliens or demons or magic, and it centers around the collapse of an interplanetary human federation and the petty wars and politicking that arose from the situation. I'm in the same boat with Battletech as I am with all major universe franchises. It's nice to have a highly developed setting for a game, but I'm always terrified of digging too deeply into the underlying lore. I prefer to view the game as a presentation of the larger universe, not necessarily as an extension of it. And I'm lousy at painting miniatures anyways. I first encountered Battletech when I received Mech Assault 2 Lone Wolf as a birthday gift, which was an absolute blast. There's a special wrinkle in my brain for that Papa Roach song they had in the menu. You know, it goes, dun dun ch dun 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 ch dun 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 ch dun 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 ch dun, somewhere between happiness and sadness. Yeah, I'll spare you the rest. My memories of that game are the main reason I looked at Mechwarrior 5 at all. I purchased it shortly after release through the Epic Store, and as I recall, there were immediately a lot of AI bugs and crashes. I didn't finish it that first time, partially because my computer couldn't really handle the graphics. Still can't. For this review, I'm playing the PlayStation 5 version, and I have the expansion packs Heroes of the Inner Sphere, Legend of the Kestrel Lancers, and Call to Arms. Each expansion adds a new questline to the game, new mechs to tinker with, and new mechanics, such as the Cantina objectives where you're given a challenge that carries from mission to mission, like to kill 5 of a specific mech for a cash reward. The game drops us into the cockpit as Commander Mason, a blank slate, helmet-faced protagonist straight from 2002. The tutorial mission is a ride-along with Commander's father, Nikolai Mason, interrupted by an ambush from the Black Inferno Company. Nikolai dies, and his mercenary company passes into the hands of Commander. We meet the chief engineer, Fahad, and the operations officer, Rihanna Campbell, who mostly drive the story. From there, the game plots a familiar course of revenge. The first act involves expanding the company, gaining more mechs and pilots. Then we begin actively hunting the Black Inferno and learning their motivations. They were hired by someone, and we'll find out who. I'm not going to go too much into the story. I don't have a deep knowledge of the Battletech universe, and none of the twists or reveals really stuck as surprising or meaningful to me. The game did a fairly bad job at explaining what sort of histories the factions had and what the stakes of their conflicts really were. Most of the story is told through brief in-engine cutscenes with Rihanna and Fahad, as well as mission descriptions and occasionally little congratulations and reprimands from the factions at the end of the mission. The plotting of missions is actually very good. Many of the special missions involve factions striking at almost civilian targets, such as bombing a logistics center to stop an army from harassing a refugee caravan, or the Nestle mission where we destroy a planetary water treatment facility to force the planet's government into buying off-world water. You get the real sense that you're being hired for economic and political espionage, that the wars have gone on for so long the lines have blurred, rather than just the blind warring you'd see in something like Mountain Blade. The generic missions are auto-generated and don't really offer much story-wise, but there are enough high-reward story and DLC missions in the game that you rarely need to take a generic mission to advance. The writers have also done a good job of showing how every faction outwardly considers itself a pinnacle of morality while committing heinous war crimes. It's nice to see a game world that is morally complex and full of intentional gray zones. You rarely have the option to take missions that are solely on the side of good, which really drives home the subtitle of the game, Mercenaries. You're just in it for the money. Gameplay in Mechwarrior 5 is split between an overworld map and the battlefield action. Let's start with the overworld, or over-universe in this case. After the death of Commander's father, we're given free reign to travel the universe. There are basically two types of systems to travel to. Industrial sectors connected with lines that are more or less at peace and are the main avenue to purchase new weapons, mechs, and pilots, and conduct repairs. Then there's the conflict zones, lassoed with the red blobs. These are where our combat missions are. They have fewer items to purchase, and repairs can be prohibitively expensive, but it's where we earn our mecha bread. The overworld gameplay in Mechwarrior 5 is primarily about deciding how much you can bite off. Run multiple missions in a row and take the risk of severe mech damage, then run back to an industrial world for repairs. Or run individual missions, repairing in the conflict zone despite the cost. Each mission you complete for a faction will raise your reputation with them, allowing subsequent missions to provide more salvage or cash, but it will lower your reputation with whichever faction they're attacking, so there's juggling to be done, keeping yourself in everyone's good or middle graces. There are plenty of other choices to make in the overworld, and it's easy to make a wrong one, like buying a shiny hero mech, and then immediately losing it in the next battle. But it's rarely impossible to recover, and if it is, well, save often. The battlefield maps are where the magic happens. Every mission allows us to take a single lance, that's a squad of 4 mechs, into combat. One controlled by us and the other 3 controlled by AI. Mechs are rated by tonnage, and the level of the mission sets the overall tonnage limit we can bring with us. We start off fairly small, and every level allows us to bring heavier mechs. Combat is highly customizable. The default is tank controls where the left stick controls throttle, but I switched to first-person shooter controls fairly early, which felt much more natural on a PS5 controller. You can also switch between a third-person camera and a first-person camera. The third-person camera can be more enjoyable to watch, but provides less precision when trying to pull off precise shots. You're always outnumbered on the battlefield, but enemies usually trickle towards you and keep the fight somewhat fair. Apart from mechs, there are turrets, tanks, and aircraft to contend with. It's generally a good idea to keep a lighter weapon on your mech to deal with aircraft, and turrets and tanks can be trampled if they get too close. Combat with enemy mechs is fun and satisfying. Mechs are divided into different sections, such as right arm, right torso, head, etc., which can be destroyed if you focus fire on that section. Enemies are killed when either both legs are blown up, the head or central structure is blown up, or all weapons are destroyed. So encounters with enemy mechs can go many different ways. If you see an enemy with an extremely heavy weapon on a lightly armored limb, maybe you focus fire and blow the weapon apart before moving on to another priority target. Armor is usually weaker at the back, so a fast-moving mech can score easy kills by circling enemies and focusing fire on the rear. Different kinds of mechs are armored up more heavily in different sections, and learning which mechs have weak head armor or leg armor is a major part of the experience. Mechs are largely made of armor, so don't expect these fights to be quick one-shot affairs like other shooters. Engagements can last minutes if neither side chooses shots well. By the end of some missions, you'll be limping to the extraction point in half a mech. But that's the fun of it. You can repair the mech and keep going tomorrow. There are several mission types in the game, though default missions tend to boil down to reach position A and kill something. DLC and high reward quests are more customized and can include shifting objectives, more dynamic maps, and a few other twists and turns. They're also much more story-driven than the generic missions. Now for the bad news. When I said the AI was buggy at launch, I may have been understating things. At this point, it's been patched fairly well, but there are still a lot of issues with the Battlefield AI, from getting stuck in walls to turning around in the middle of a firefight. The game keeps multiple autosaves, and you'll likely have to use them when your squad mates suddenly decide to charge ahead and get instantly vaporized. The game features an extensive system for mech loadout customization. This is the part of the game where my eye starts twitching. There are multiple patterns of each mech, fitted with different hardpoints. Weapon hardpoints have sizes, small, medium, large, and are specific to damage type, ballistic, energy, and missile. That determines what weapons you can slot in. Heavier mechs generally sport larger weapon hardpoints and better armor. And there are also other considerations, like bringing enough ammo, or adding more heat sinks to avoid overheating at a crucial moment, or adding jump jets for extra mobility, or taking them away and adding more armor. There's a lot to consider here, and I expect everyone who plays to develop different strategies. On my most recent playthrough, I settled on downgrading my squad mates' weapons to smaller categories, then boosting their armor to max. This helped tremendously with their survivability, while I went ahead and loaded my personal mech up with the highest damage weapons I could find and almost nothing else. There are potentially limitless ways to play this game, and ultimately it comes down to what mechs you're able to salvage and how you want to use them. The Call to Arms DLC even added melee weapons, which sound fun, but I haven't been too successful in my attempts to use them. The battlefield tends to favor long-range combat, which can be an issue. The graphics in Mechwarrior 5 are fine. The design and rendering of individual mechs is stellar. They all look like they belong in the same universe, and they all share this aesthetic with Japanese bulldozers from the 80s. Although that success belongs to the Battletech designers who've been tinkering with the mechs for 40 years. Some of the game-specific overworld graphics, the hangar, the menus we navigate, these are all well designed and highly polished, but the in-engine cutscenes are a little rough, and they are just overall poorly blocked. The real issue is in the battlefield. There's a failure of scale in this game. Maybe it's just an issue with perspective, maybe the environments are a little oversized considering the height the player views from. It's probably a combination of issues, but the mechs feel more like a guy in a suit than a huge machine. Mechs also have a tendency to fully disappear into the environment during a fight. Since there are so many long-range weapons, engagements usually start off as blindly firing at the target marker for the enemy, rather than aiming at the model itself. Likewise, the sound design for the game fails to really get across the scope of the battles. The guns sound quieter than submachine guns and other first-person shooters, even though we're basically firing naval cannons at each other.
Target acquired.
The mechs don't really sound loud enough either. Again, it seems like an issue of scale, where the audio is more like a human in a rubber suit than a library-sized bulldozer. It's all just a little flat.
It's moving in, Commander. Get ready for them.
Another issue, the sound effects don't really layer. They tend to blend together into a sludge, so fights can quickly become unpleasant to listen to.
Structure failure. Lost something. Additional tangos en route to your position, Commander.
The music selection in the game is fairly good, though not particularly memorable.
Target acquired. Target destroyed.
Bad news, Commander. More
I just think it'd be better with Papa Roach.
Somewhere between happiness and sad.
Performances in Mechwarrior are a real mixed bag. The weak link is Commander Mason, although this might be more on the writers than the performer.
Copy that.
It almost seems like they wanted a silent protagonist, and then gave him lines at the last minute. They're all very bland, usually just simple affirmations, and he doesn't really seem like he exists beyond the moments where he's saying, "Got it, let's go."
With extreme prejudice, huh? I can definitely do that. See you in a bit.
Despite my complaints, this game really appeals to me. I've heard a lot about games as power fantasy, but Mechwarrior 5 touches on something different. Something I call the shitbox fantasy. The first time I felt its allure was when the starter went out on an old Fiat tractor we had, so we took to always parking it on a hill, We'd throw it in neutral, ease the parking brake, and use the momentum to start the engine. It was a nuisance, it was a headache, and it felt incredible. And it's not just me, I've seen plenty of guys look downright gleeful spraying starter fluid onto their engines. It's exhilarating to know the secret of a machine. It's thrilling to have a mechanism change through your own use, through your own design, to have it respond to something you know to do that nobody else would guess, to have a conversation with the steel. Mechwarrior touches on this. Eventually, through experimentation, you'll find a mech that works for you against all odds, and that's when the game is at its best. That's why I can't stop playing. To summarize, Mechwarrior 5 has an extremely fun gameplay loop, a surprisingly grounded setting, highly modifiable controls, and really shines when the player takes an interest in the customization of their mechs. Weak points of the game include janky AI, a moderate amount of bugs, issues with the scale of mechs, a sparse and predictable story, and underwhelming sound design. Despite all this, I still recommend it wholeheartedly. I think it's a shoo-in for anyone who likes first-person or third-person shooters with longer shootouts than Call of Duty. Anyone who liked the aesthetics of Pacific Rim or RoboJox will probably get a kick from the designs. I also think gamers who like the career modes of modern franchise sport games might be really thrilled with the progression in the campaign. There are a lot of parallels between these 50-foot-tall murder machines and NFL players, after all. I wouldn't suggest this game to anyone who isn't interested in tinkering or customizing the mechs, anyone who already dislikes shooter games, or anyone with little patience for bugs. Mechwarrior 5 will almost definitely require a reload to avoid a game-breaking bug at some point in your playthrough, but if you stick with it, it's a highly enjoyable experience. On the pain scale, I'd give this game a mild. I could play it again and again. This is a large part of why I don't try to give objective scores to games. Sometimes I get the most enjoyment from a game with a lot of issues. I wish I could say this game was painless, but the AI issues and some of the bugs do, unfortunately, cause pain. Well, that's it for my third review. I was thinking of doing a more specific review of the most recent DLCs, Rise of Razzlehog and Dragon's Gambit, but I don't know if it's really worth it. Anyways, see ya!